Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you too.
So you have presided over the 11th Parliament, and in particular the National Assembly. What would you say its successes have been?
First, I want to appreciate that the 11th Parliament is one that is going to serve the shortest period in Kenyan history, 4 years and 4 months. But I think within those 4 years, particularly in the National Assembly, we've seen so many bills passed without a lot of acrimony. That indeed it will go down in history as one that really performed the legislative role quite exceptionally well.
Which would you say would be the highlight bills that helped move Kenya forward under a new constitutional dispensation?
A key among them would be, in my opinion, the overhaul, complete overhaul of the Companies Law in Kenya. If you recall, the Companies Act in Kenya was for an ordinance passed in 1948. And for all these years, we've been operating under that law. But today, we have a modern Companies Act. And of course, we also were able to bring in an insolvency law, which is modern, and even fast-track the process of business registration. Those, in my opinion, are very, very critical bills. Of course, the climate change laws, the laws to do with environmental degradation, all of them, mining laws, all of them are landmarks.
All right. And yet analysts would say legislatively you have in equal measure failed on key pieces of legislation. Up till this morning there were varied issues on the division of revenue bill. This house is sitting unconstitutionally to some. It failed to enact the requisite legislation on the 2/3 gender rule in violation of a court ruling that gave it 60 days. How would you then measure your successes against such critical failures?
The division of revenue bill, fortunately, maybe Kenyans don't know, but maybe for good news, is that the mediation committee has come up with a mediated version of the bill. Therefore, that matter is no longer contentious. The issue about the gender bill, it is still on the order paper. But can the speaker has no vote? Again, that is one thing which is in the constitution. My business is to preside. It is up to the parties to mobilize their members to come and vote. You saw how much effort I put towards ensuring that the parties make efforts to bring their members. 2 attempts.
Right.
We failed. But also, when you say that the House is sitting unconstitutionally, I don't understand. I don't even know where that comes from.
Because 60 days were given by a court.
If 60 days which were given by the court elapse, that does not mean Parliament stops still sitting. It is Kenyans. It is not a Parliament. It is Kenyans out there, those who are making noise, or those who went to court, or others who should go to court, seek the assistance of the Chief Justice to advise the President to dissolve Parliament. Until it is dissolved, it cannot be said to be unconstitutional.
But you would agree that that is what it deserves, is it not? To be dissolved, for members to go without their pay for the remaining term?
For 1 month? Well, if that is the order. But look at what is the process that follows after dissolution. You just have to look at Article 261. That the incoming Parliament would have the similar period within which to enact the law that is that the other Parliament failed to enact. And if that other Parliament fails to enact that law within that period, then the other Parliament would have to start the process from clause 1 of 261.
So it is your interpretation that the 12th Parliament will equally have 60 days should this House fail?
Not 60.
You're saying 5 years?
Yes, 5 years. Yes, it will have the same period. If you look at the 5th schedule, this law was to be enacted within a period of 5 years. If you recall, this Parliament extended the period by 1 year, which is permitted in the Constitution. So that other Parliament would have the same period. Indeed, it would have the latitude to extend to the 6th year.
And you know, I suppose the jury is still out on that, because lawyers who are arguing this case argue that because it is a gender rights issue, it is a human rights issue, and will enjoy a different interpretation from the law courts. But we will wait and see what the determination on that will be. Let
me also express myself on this. If this issue is so serious, is so much at the center of Kenyans' minds, and remember this issue of gender representation is in the Bill of Rights. Any amendments to the Bill of Rights can only be through a referendum. Why is it that nobody is proposing to take this matter to the court of public opinion, which will be in the referendum? I have suggested that to very many of these the activists.
You're saying there's insincerity, the gender issue is not being taken seriously?
If the Parliament is the one that is being accused, why don't we take it to the general public? They have refused. They say, no, you want to kill it now. If you take it to the public, it will die. The public will not pass it. So what does that tell you?
Kenya is not ready for near equal gender representation?
Take it to the referendum. I'm not the judge on this. Take it to the referendum. Let Kenyans go and express themselves.
You don't sound very optimistic.
Well, I will not campaign against it.
Will you campaign for it?
I will leave Kenyans to express themselves.
Let's move on to the nature of debate in the House. We've seen some of the most stormy sessions, some degenerating to the extent of bringing the House into disrepute. It is under your leadership where we've seen members allege that their undergarments have been removed in a session of Parliament, others biting each other in a session of Parliament, blows exchanged. To what do you owe that kind of ruckus? Is it the nature of the members of the 11th Parliament? Is it a failure to some extent on your part to bring the kind of leadership that would be uniting of very opposing opinions on the floor of the House?
It is not the business of the Speaker to unite people. Article 4 of the Constitution says that Kenya shall be is a democratic multi-party state. So there are many parties are supposed to be represented in the House. The Speaker's business is to ensure that everybody has a fair chance to make their contribution, and to ensure that when they are making their contributions, they are not interrupted unnecessarily, and to ensure that the rules of procedure which the House gave itself are followed.
Is it equally your responsibility to ensure that the image of the House, the repute of the House when in debate, upholds the august nature of it?
That is the work of the Speaker. It's for that reason that the standing orders are there to be enforced by the Speaker. But also let me say this. I know Kenyans, since the adoption of the new Constitution, Kenyans are enjoying a lot of freedoms, and it is good, it is healthy. Let's not see it as if it's a setback. Of course, I'm sure many Kenyans have not watched debates in the Indian Lok Sabha, in the House of Commons in Britain, to see people fighting in the House of Commons in Canada. They have not seen fights in the Korean Parliament and in very many other parliaments. Of course, they have seen how Malema has been behaving in South Africa. So when we pick one incident or two in Kenya and say this is very bad,
3 or 4.
Which is 3 or 4
that are particularly ugly. Is this not a low point for the 11th House?
It is the lowest. That was the lowest. That was on the 18th of December 2014. The other one was when the president was addressing the House. But we took the necessary action that was required. That's what the Speaker is supposed to do. It's not supposed. The Speaker is not supposed to run away. And in my nature, like I've said severally, I am not a coward. I don't run away from taking hard decisions, which is what I have had to do.
And in your taking of these decisions, you've been seen to be partisan, especially when it came to the debate and passage of the controversial security laws. We heard from the opposition saying that you were flagrantly in support of the executive or furthering the executive's agenda.
Let me say this. On the security laws, there were so many proposed amendments by members from both sides of the House. In fact, I remember one of the members who was making a lot of noise on that day allow me not to mention her name, although that could be leading, and to allow her proposed amendments on that morning, because we said, go before the committee. If you don't agree with the committee, please, you are at liberty to propose your own amendments. Which amendments I am to approve one by one. If I allowed those amendments to go on, and remember on this particular occasion, it was not the business of the Speaker to be on the chair at committee of the whole House, but the Deputy Speaker, who is the chair of the committees, when she went there, you saw what happened in the morning. This chaos broke out, people poured water on her. She felt insecure. What does that happen? She came to me and told me that now this looks a bit chaotic. Who can handle it? I mean, somebody had to do the job. You don't, in a situation of that nature, you have to be firm with the administration, with the procedures which are there. And I want to tell you this. When the members of the court coalition went to court challenging those laws, only 8 clauses were found to have been unconstitutional. And the courts advised the executive, who are the movers of the bill, to amend them so as to accord to the Constitution. That is the way it should be the world over. The court asked, can we see the record? The court did not ask for photographs of people throwing kicks or doing the rest. They asked for the official record of the House. And the court upheld that everything was in order.
So
it's only that Kenyans don't seem to understand these procedures, but they will learn with the time.
But in such scenarios, to what do you attribute that sort of behavior in the House? Is it the fact that this Parliament had, such youthful members, many of them the very first time, having been elected, or did it have to do with perhaps an inability in the leadership of the House to command the same sort of respect that some would say arguably your predecessor had?
My predecessor, of course, worked in a grand coalition situation where there was no opposition. The leadership of the opposition in this country, everybody knows, is not in the Houses of Parliament. Indeed, because they are outside of Parliament, that contributes a great deal to the fact that there is no proper consultation that happens. That people consult here, but they have to go and consult others. And on that particular occasion, notwithstanding the fact that members of the opposition had proposed so many good amendments, some of which were actually carried, and a fact which people don't know today, up to today. But they were told that don't waste your time. Don't move those amendments. Just make sure that nothing happens. Those were the clear instructions. Go and disrupt. And let me ask, maybe some of you may not quite remember. You recall the budget speech of 1997? What happened? What were Kina Orengo trying to do? Were they not going to grab the mace? They fought. People were wrestled to the ground.
Let's move on to the question of...
But it's the nature of opposition. Okay. But also let me say this, Anne. The previous parliaments have had one big advantage. And this is something that Kenyans need to think about. The fact that we've had ministers in the House, assistant ministers, and the possibility of backbenchers from the governing party being tapped for appointment into either cabinet or assistant made the behavior of most members be much, much better. But again, more importantly, remember, it's just in the 10th Parliament that we began live coverage of parliamentary proceedings. So some of these things people may not quite know. But I think, and I've always held the view that ministers will behave with a certain form of decorum. It is not so much that the current parliament has too many young people, but of course, opposition will always have to give account of themselves. And it is a legitimate way. If you disagree with a particular position, and of course, if you think you are a minority, you are fewer in numbers, it is, you know, you must create drama, walk out. It is agreed. It's actually acceptable the world over that a walkout is a legitimate way of expressing your displeasure.
Okay, I want to move on to the question of your relations with the Senate, which have been stormy, degenerating to, some would say, pettiness and catfighting, a scramble of which is the upper, which is the lower house, which is the retirees' house, which is, you know, the a more youthful house, and a lot of concern regarding the inability of these two houses to reach common ground and push through key legislation. Just today in the dailies, there's a report with the Speaker of the Senate basically throwing you under the bus, saying that it is this house that has failed to pass more than, or consider more than 30 key pieces of legislation, passing a paltry amount, all of which to the detriment of the country. How do you respond to such an assertion?
If legislation originates in the Senate, which the Constitution says should not originate, I do the usual thing, refer to the relevant committee of the House, the committee makes a report. And if they see that this bill should not have originated there, a decision is made, it's taken. It is not the Speaker. Remember, even if I insisted and the House says no, the Speaker has no vote. In fact, I would challenge the Senate to move to the next level. Go to the court, seek an interpretation of the various provisions, particularly Article 109, Clause 5 of the Constitution about money bills origination. Because that is where there seems to be the greatest headache. Otherwise, all other bills that have come from the Senate, which have not been adjudged to be money bills by the National Assembly, have been passed. Yeah?
So the Senate is overreaching?
Well, let me not say that, because
has failed to understand the Constitution, the basics? I
think so. And I think if they wanted that matter resolved, because they have their own interpretation, we have our own interpretation, then the best thing that should happen now is to seek an advisory opinion from the Supreme Court on what it is that Article 109, Clause 5 of the Constitution demands.
Why in a little over 4 years, have you been unable to sit down with your counterpart and chart a way forward that will not necessitate going to the courts?
I always take this the earliest opportunity. Whenever I see tension, any tension that is likely to happen, I don't even wait. I walk to the office of the Speaker of Senate. I go and discuss with him. We discuss. We may agree as speakers. That's the other thing that Kenyans need to understand. The speakers may agree, but the decisions are not theirs. You can go and place business in the order paper, but the members of the House may refuse to deal with that business. If they resolve in a particular way, you as Speaker cannot overrule that, because if you did, then you'll be assuming a vote which you are denied specifically in the Constitution.
Finally.
So I think going forward, we should find a greater understanding. And I'm happy also, I'm seeing quite a number of young Kenyans who are running for Senate. I think it's an encouragement. But I must say, which I've always said, some of the problems emanated from the fact that when our Senate came into being in this 11th Parliament, majority of the so-called experienced members were only experienced in the work that is done in the National Assembly. They had never been to any Senate, because they had never been a Senate since the promulgation of the Constitution. Right. And therefore, some of those hangovers about some of the intrigues they used to do, some of them would do a few jigs in the National Assembly, as happens, you know, in most houses, in most parliaments.
Miss being MPs.
So yeah, exactly, and therefore they would feel that no, we need to have committees similar to this one in the Senate, and we see it. But I think
sounds like you're saying you think it's a bit of a retiree's home.
Well, I'm not too sure, but
oh wow!
But I'm not too sure. But let me say this: somebody should go to the debates that happened in January 2010 in Naivasha and see what kind of Senate was intended for Kenyans until the committee of experts changed. If you go to those records, you will see. And I don't want to give names of some people because some of them are sitting in those houses. You will be shocked at what they themselves proposed for that house.
What, more power, less power? What
no, they even proposed that they should not sit for more than 30 days in a year.
You're saying the Senate is unnecessary? Is that where you're going?
That is not what they were saying even then.
You're saying it's not very necessary.
They were saying the Senate should be like, you know, it was being modeled on the lines of the NCOP of South Africa. We wanted something like what you would call a unifying, unifying house with the representation from every county, not necessarily coming to do politics or serious legislative work. At some point, there was a proposal to have to call it a council of tribal chiefs, you know.
Wow. So
that you have a house of tribes, you know, tribesmen and women, so that, you know, you bring all communities together. That
sounds to me like you're saying they should relax. They're not that serious.
But it was changed.
Even been tribal chiefs.
It was changed.
That's what I'm hearing.
But it was changed and given some legislative powers. If you look at that Article 96, you will see
all right.
They were given some legislative powers because they are defined as part of Parliament.
Wow, with this feud, clearly, we'll see how it goes on in the next life of Parliament. But, sir, I must wind up, Mr. Speaker, and it is with this. What next for you? Would you want to have another term as Speaker? Are you ready to go back, I believe, to law, is it? Run for president one day?
Well, if members give me the opportunity, I would love to continue serving as a speaker, because I think there's a lot of work that we have begun, both even what we're talking about, both the National Assembly and the Senate. And if you read our revised standing orders, you will see a lot of that. We are saying, no, something that comes from the Senate, this is the way we want it to be done. We want to, this communication should be like in this manner, in this manner. You see, I would love to see those things which we have agreed being implemented. So maybe this friction will not continue.
And but presidency I must say, at the corner of your eye?
Let's not talk about that because
today.
Today, yes, not today.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.